Adam with the Lavin Real Estate Group and Next Home Synergy. And I'm coming to you today to give you my opinion on what's going to happen in the next year's 2022 real estate market for Delaware County and Chester County, because we kind of all work the same and we're always on the same page. So here's a couple of things that I think are going to happen. The first is what we've already seen happen, and that is that the gap between what is being offered for the price of a home and what the home eventually sells for is going to shrink. I'm sure some of you that live in neighborhoods and already own houses have heard horror stories from your neighbors that sold their house over the summer, where they got offered an extraordinary price on their home, and then when they finally went to settlement, they didn't actually get as much as was originally offered because the house didn't appraise. And what was happening in those situations, as we went from June and July and August, when the market was super hot, was that we started kind of squeezing in on how much the homes were actually worth versus what was getting offered. And on the back end, we had to negotiate deals where buyers were paying what was called a mortgage gap, and they were paying over the amount that was offered, or the sellers had to take the hit and what they originally thought they were going to make on a house and that they were probably using to buy their next house or invest in retirement or whatever the money was planned to be used for. They had to take the hit on it and get away from that. So what we are seeing, and what I think is going to continue to be a trend, is that although there are going to be multiple offers on houses, you're not going to see radically above list price offers, and it's simply because we already know in the professional world that that gap is closing. If there's no point of taking the offer that's way over, because it's not going to actually be what the house eventually sells for. What that is also going to do on the buyer's end is it is going to decrease the level of competition to a point where somebody can't come in and just offer a crazy amount, but it is going to mean that the most qualified buyer is most likely going to win the bid. And what that means is two things. One, you need to make sure that you're working with a great agent that understands the ins and outs of writing a contract, writing a clean contract, and presenting the best offer. And the other part is that you are upfront with your finances as possible, and that you're working with a great lender as well as a great real estate agent that knows how to present you financially in the best light. Because what's going to happen is, as you present your buyer financial information to the sellers and to the listing agent, as opposed to just how much is being offered, what they're really going to start looking for is how qualified you are, which means how much you're offering as an escrow deposit, what your monthly income is, if you can afford the house, and how long you've had that job. So somebody that just happened to get a crazy bonus last month and now they're going to buy the $1 million house probably isn't going to be as safe a bet as somebody that's had their job and been qualified for the last 15, 20 years. And then obviously the last thing is going to be actually how much money outside of the escrow deposit that you do have in your bank account should something happen. So in the past, sellers have or buyers have kind of kept it close to their chest about how much money they actually have, because they don't want to show too much. And in this case, being as open and honest as humanly possible, and working with a great agent and a great mortgage broker or lender is going to be super important to put your best foot forward. The next thing that I'm positive is going to happen is that we are going to remain in a seller's market. And the biggest reason for that is there's just more buyers out there with more open mortgages that are still left over from 2021 that still want to purchase, and then those people that are stepping into the first-time home buying fiasco that continues to go on, that are qualified to buy houses. And the amount of houses that are on the market right now continue to shrink. The other thing that is obviously going to continue to create the seller's market is the lack of inventory that is being created by the leftovers of what happened with COVID. So one thing with that is that new construction just isn't happening at the fast rate as we possibly need, especially in this area, in the Philadelphia metro area. And then on top of that, you have still the exodus from the city, where people kind of want to get out of that city life of being on top of each other with new modern health scares and awareness that's going on. And the other thing that's really happened with the entire COVID thing over the last couple of years is a lot of companies are continuing the work from home model. And what that does is now you have you're working from home, your significant other might be working from home, you're home with the animals and the children a lot more. A lot of times in-laws live with families that I work with. And so now you have the home is being used for a lot more different things. And so it's requiring people to upgrade and move into bigger houses. And so the want and desire for those houses is still there. There's just not as much to go on. So that's going to continue to create this seller's market where really there's more buyers than sellers. And so the sellers kind of have control and say at the end of the day of what goes on. With that, the other thing that we know is going to happen is that interest rates are going to continue to rise a little bit. I don't think they're ever going to, jump up to 10% from where we've been at, between 3 and 4% over the last couple of years, in the very near future at least. But even if it moves a half a percentage point, what that is doing is that is going, as a buyer, going to increase the amount of money that you owe on your mortgage and your real estate taxes combined every single month. What that does is it decreases your buying power, because the way that you are pre-qualified for a mortgage is basically based on your debt to income ratio. Now, on the seller's side, it's really better to kind of stay ahead of that if you are thinking about selling and selling your house sooner than later, because as these interest rates rise and buyers aren't going to have as much money to spend per se on houses, because the debt to income ratio kind of shrinks their ability to buy a more expensive house. The ability, especially if you're in some of those higher price brackets, the ability to have multiple offers on your home and create some of the buyer chaos that's occurred and the pandemonium that creates multiple offers is going to decrease. Now that's probably going to happen to a point in all price categories, but specifically in Delaware County, once you get over $400,000 with the average income that occurs in this area in most of the school districts, that's really where you're going to start to see the squeeze. So from a buyer's perspective, it's better to buy sooner than later right now and get your mortgage rate locked in. And the same really goes for the sellers. You really want to kind of lock in your ability to have multiple offers on the table right now, before we watched our buyers kind of dry up or move down into a price bracket. And then of course your home goes along with that. The next thing that we're 100% positive is going to happen, and we're watching it happen right now in January, is that COVID is going to continue to create volatility in the market. And what I mean by that is, we don't know which way it's going to go. We do know that the entire market will never shut down again. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the federal Supreme Court have really put a kind of stop on that. And so the crazy fear shutdown that occurred in 2019 going into 2020, we can pretty much guarantee that's never going to happen again. That being said, if you just go grocery shopping, you kind of know that certain things are hard to find. People kind of have this scarcity mentality still. Some people are afraid to go out. Some people are not as afraid to go out, but it creates this kind of human emotion pandemonium within the market that we really can't account for or predict, which way it's going to go based on what's going on in the news and just what's going on in the general health of the public. So what that's going to do to the market, honestly, I can't really forecast that, but what I can tell you is that it's going to continue in one way or another. Some people are more likely to move, some people are less likely to move, but this kind of goes back into the fact that we will most likely stay in a seller's market because people will be, a little bit more afraid to let random people in their house and a little bit afraid to kind of move out. And they're a little bit afraid as to what's going on in the financial markets around the world, where they, want to let go of their house. And then on the buyer's side, the world still keeps turning, where they need a bigger house or more space or, whatever it is. And then the last thing that I foresee really happening that is going to not only affect the buyers and sellers, but also a lot of the investors that exist that have sort of been sitting on the back burner, is we are definitely going to start to see, first of all, there's been the end to the rent moratorium. So evictions are back in play. And the other thing that's happening is your big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, so on and so forth, they're going to start the foreclosure process again. We're far enough as a country out of this where we kind of know what to expect, and everybody's sort of back to work. Those that weren't able to go to work, things have been modified. Unemployment is dropping a little bit every single month, or we're going in the right direction at least. And so we're kind of at the point now where, unless something catastrophic happens again, the banks are going to start the foreclosure process. Now, that doesn't make an immediate change. We're probably not going to see the effects of that really take place for 1 to 2 years from now. But what it is going to do is it's going to slowly add inventory. And so from a seller's perspective, that's going to kind of hurt you. One, because if there's a house that's foreclosed in the area, just not a great look, let's be honest. But the other thing too is that when sellers look or buyers look online and they look in your area, they're going to see a house nearby that's significantly less. Now, what it won't do is it won't affect your appraisal value of your house. So those aren't included in the actual value of your house. So the preconceived notion that, if the houses start foreclosing in my area, that's going to make it look worse for me, so I need to sell now, or I need to hold on and wait a couple of years. Neither of those are really true. But it does affect the market in that it affects the buyer's view on the market. Now, for a buyer or an investor, what that's going to do is create more options for you. Now, I will tell you that purchasing a house that's either in foreclosure or short sale is a pretty complicated situation, and it's not the same as just buying a normal house that's on the market. And so I would strongly suggest you interview your real estate agent and make sure they understand not only how to proceed with one of those transactions, but also that they understand how it affects the local market and what you need to do and what you can expect as a buyer going into those situations. But for the house, if you don't want to go, after a foreclosure or a short sale, you're just not financially or mentally capable of that, or emotionally capable, what it does do is it does dissipate the amount of buyers that are going after a particular house in a neighborhood or an area. And so that is probably one of the biggest things that you're really going to see start to happen as we move into it. And what's going to shift the market over the next 5 years is the reintroduction of foreclosures as well as short sales. Not to the extent that we saw in 2007, 8, and 9, but it will be a whole new thing that we're kind of learning as we go through. So those are my predictions. That is what I think. If you have questions as to when it's the best time for you to either sell your home or when it's the best time to purchase your home, the best thing to do is really give me a call, send me an email, text message, whatever you're comfortable with. And we kind of work through where you're at in your life and what your ultimate goals are. Because honestly, there's never a right or wrong time to buy or sell a house. It's really what works best for you. So I'd love to get the chance to talk to you, let you know how I view your house or where you want to buy your house and what we need to do to take the next step. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Adam. My phone number is 610-442-9371. You can call and text me anytime. I look forward to working with you.